Hello, and welcome to another how-to video by Clavister. In this video, we are going to explain how to set up a virtual firewall using VMware Workstation. Then we are going to redirect the traffic from our computer through the firewall. But first, let's take a look to our environment. Currently, our computer has IP 172.16.1.124 and default gateway the router that has IP 172.16.1.1. Our plan is to set up a virtual firewall in the middle and redirect the traffic. In order to achieve that, we will need a firewall with two interfaces. On interface 1, we are going to use the IP 192.168.1.1 and network 192.168.1.0/24. That is the default IP and network configured on the firewall. Our computer will be connected to that interface with IP 192.168.1.124 and gateway the IP of the interface 1. On the other side, we will set up the IP of the interface to be on the same network as the router, and we are going to set up the router as the default gateway for interface 2. If you are already using 192.168.1.0/24 on your LAN, you will need to change the networks on the firewall. You will find more information on how to do that in the end of the video. Let's start. Our first step will be to download the latest CS Core base installation. When the download is complete, we extract the files to our desktop. We open VMware Workstation and we import CS Core. To achieve that, we just need to drag and drop the OVF file to the workstation. Our next step would be to take a look at the virtual machine settings. By default, the allocated memory is 1 GB. The maximum allocated memory that Core can support is 4 GB. By default, the virtual machine has 3 network adapters. For this scenario, we are going to need 2, and they should be bridged to the physical network interface. It's also important to make sure that the Connect on Power is selected. So let's power on our virtual firewall. As you see, the interface 1 has already the IP 192.168.1.1. Before we try to access the web UI of the firewall, we will need to change the IP of our computer. as mentioned earlier, we will use 192.168.1.124 and 192.168.1.1 as gateway, the IP of the interface 1 of the firewall. The remote management by HTTPS and SSH is enabled by default on interface 1 for hosts connected to that network. That means that we can access the web UI by browsing to HTTPS 192.168.1.1. Since the firewall is using self-signed certificates, we will need to add an exception to our browser. The default username and password is admin, something that we will need to change immediately for security reasons. The first time that we access the web UI, the setup wizard will appear to help us set up the firewall. As mentioned, we will need to change the default password to something more difficult. We will need to set up the time. We have the option to select between normal mode or transparent mode. In our scenario, normal mode is needed. Then we will have to select the 1 interface. In our scenario, this is interface 2. We will have to set up a static IP for interface 2. We can also configure it as a DHCP client if our router has an DHCP server. We fill in the required information according to our scenario. The IP 172.16.1.2, the network 172.16.1.0/24, and the gateway 172.16.1.1. And finally, we can choose our primary and secondary DNS server. For interface 1, our LAN side, we will skip setting up a DHCP server. So we save and activate. Now the traffic from our computer is directed to the firewall and is dropped by the default rule. The firewall will drop all traffic except if it is stated otherwise. We are going to create an IP policy to allow ICMP from our LAN to the internet. After we save and activate again, we can test pinging an IP from the tools provided in our firewall. As you see, the ping is successful. Now we can try and ping from our computer. As you see, that is also successful. For now, we will need to add two more policies, one for DNS and another one for HTTP and HTTPS. All other packages will be dropped. As you see, the firewall is running in demo mode, and after 2 hours it will be placed in lockdown mode. In order to avoid that, we will need to upload a license to our firewall. The next step will be to activate our license. We will need a MAC address from one of our interfaces and the license number. We log into my Clavister and we go to Licenses, Register License. We select license number and MAC address and we fill in both fields. By pressing Register License, our license is now activated. We will need to download it and upload it to our firewall. Uploading the license will unlock the full potentials of the firewall, including antivirus, IDP, IP reputation, VPN tunnels, and many more. When the license is uploaded, the firewall needs to reboot in order to apply the changes. To sum up, all the traffic from our computer goes through the firewall. And we can use the firewall to filter the traffic and secure our network. I mentioned in the beginning that if you are already using the 192.168.1.0/24 network, you should modify a bit the scenario we just explained. After you have imported CS Core to VMware Workstation, you will need to access the command line and do some changes. Then you will be able to access the web interface. The easiest way would be to change 4 objects N1 setting. We will need to change the objects of interface 1 IP, interface 1 network, interface 2 IP, and interface 2 network, and the enforce strong password setting. Disabling the enforce strong password setting is the easiest way to save and activate for the first time. After we have gained access to the web UI, we should enable the strong password policy again.